billionaire fortunes possibly have in common with a king from the Dark Ages who lived over 1,200 years ago? The answer: a playbook. A financial script so powerful it could forge a superpower from the ashes of a fallen world. Let's set the scene. 300 years after the Western Roman Empire collapsed, Europe was a mess. It was a chaotic patchwork of petty kingdoms, a dark age of fractured economies, warring tribes, and forgotten knowledge. Trade had ground to a halt. Infrastructure was crumbling. Gold, the lifeblood of the old Roman economy, was basically a memory. This was a world lit only by fire, a continent completely adrift. Out of this chaos, one man would rise to build an empire that stretched across 1,000,000 square kilometers, uniting most of Western Europe for the first time in centuries. That man was Charles the Great, or as we know him, Charlemagne. But this isn't just a story about conquests and crowns. This is the story of how that empire was paid for. How did one man turn a fragmented continent into Europe's first superpower? He didn't just do it with a sword, he did it with a revolutionary financial playbook. And these aren't just dusty old lessons on money and power. They're the foundational principles of wealth that are just as relevant for building your own empire today. So, let's decode them. Section 1. The Inheritance, a Kingdom in Need of a System. When Charlemagne became king of the Franks in 768 AD, he didn't inherit an empire. He inherited a huge problem. The Frankish kingdom was big, but it was also a disorganized and fragile mess. For generations, the economy had been running on the fumes of the old Roman system it had replaced. Imagine trying to run a multinational corporation where every single department uses a different currency. That was Charlemagne's reality. The currency was a disaster, a mix of worn-out Roman coins, a few fancy Byzantine gold solidi that were useless for daily shopping, and a dizzying array of locally made, inconsistent silver coins. Commerce was paralyzed. How do you set a price for grain when the money you get might be worthless in the next town over? For most people, a primitive barter system was the only option. You have chickens, I have wool, let's hope we can make a fair trade. You simply can't build a superpower by bartering chickens. On top of that, the kingdom's income was dangerously unstable. His predecessors had mostly funded their rule through plunder and the spoils of war. That is, without a doubt, the riskiest business model in history. It banks on you constantly winning wars. A single big defeat could bankrupt the entire kingdom overnight. Charlemagne knew that to build something that would last, he needed to get beyond the economics of a glorified raiding party. The legal and administrative systems were just as broken. Power was scattered among local dukes and counts who often ran their territories like personal kingdoms. There was no unified tax code, no real central treasury, and no reliable way to fund a professional army or big projects. Charlemagne inherited a crown, sure, but his kingdom desperately needed a system. A financial operating system. And so, he started writing one. Section 2. The Playbook, Forging an Economic Engine. Charlemagne's genius wasn't just winning battles. It was his understanding that real, lasting power is built on a rock-solid economic foundation. He systematically tore down the chaotic systems he inherited and replaced them with a revolutionary playbook. These were radical reforms that would become the financial bedrock of Europe for 1,000 years. Play number 1. The Silver Standard, a unified currency for a unified empire. Charlemagne's first move was brilliant. He solved the currency crisis. He realized that gold was just too rare in Western Europe to work as everyday money. Gold was for kings, not for bakers and farmers. So, he made a pivotal choice. He abandoned the gold standard and went all in on silver. He introduced a new, unified currency based on a coin called the denarius. His reform, the Carolingian monetary system, was built on simple, elegant math. From 1 Carolingian pound of pure silver, his mints were ordered to strike exactly 240 identical pennies. Suddenly, a penny from Paris was worth the exact same as a penny from Milan. For the first time in centuries, people had money they could actually trust. The system was so logical that its structure, pounds, shillings, and pence, would be used in Britain all the way until 1971. This one move was a masterstroke. It immediately simplified trade, allowed for consistent taxation, and began weaving the fragmented territories into a single economic powerhouse. Play number 2, the power of land fueling the war machine. With the economy stabilizing, Charlemagne tackled his next big problem. How do you fund the most powerful army in Europe? His solution was to leverage the single most valuable asset he had, land. He perfected a system of land grants known as benefices. As emperor, he granted huge estates to his most loyal warriors. But these weren't gifts, they were contracts. In exchange for the land, the recipient became a royal vassal, swearing an oath of loyalty and, crucially, military service. This was a decentralized, scalable way to fund a professional military. Instead of the state paying soldiers, the land itself paid for the army. In modern terms, think of it as a brilliant franchise model. Charlemagne was giving his top managers a massive stake in the success of the operation. Their personal wealth was directly tied to serving the empire. It was a playbook for making sure your most powerful people want exactly what you want. Play number 3, taxation and tithes, diversifying the revenue stream. Plunder was a gamble. Land grants funded the army but didn't fill the royal treasury. Charlemagne knew he needed stable, diverse revenue streams. He started levying direct taxes on trade and collecting tolls and fines. But his most significant source of income came from a clever partnership with the church. Charlemagne made the religious tithe, donating 1/10 of all you produce, a legally mandatory tax. The church already had an incredible administrative network that reached into every single village. By enforcing the tithe with the law, Charlemagne essentially piggybacked on that network. This new river of revenue supported the clergy and cared for the poor, which kept society stable. But it also freed up other royal funds for everything else he wanted to do. It was a masterclass in using existing infrastructure to create a new, predictable, massive income stream. Play number 4, investing in infrastructure, the arteries of empire. Every empire needs arteries to move goods, armies, and information. Charlemagne kicked off a massive program to build and repair roads and bridges. These were vital for moving his armies and made trade faster and safer, adding more fuel to the economic fire. But his vision went even further. In 793, he began one of the most ambitious projects of the Middle Ages, the Fossa Carolina, a canal to connect the Rhine and Danube river systems. If it worked, it would have created an unbroken waterway from the North Sea to the Black Sea. Heavy rains and engineering challenges doomed the project, but the ambition is breathtaking. Like a CEO investing in a global supply chain, Charlemagne knew that whoever controls the infrastructure controls the future. Even his failures show just how big his playbook was. A self-sustaining empire. Putting this playbook into action didn't just make Charlemagne rich, it transformed Europe. The result was a powerful, self-sustaining empire and an explosion of culture and knowledge, the Carolingian Renaissance. With a stable currency and safer roads, trade flourished. Real prosperity was returning to Western Europe. This new wealth allowed Charlemagne to become one of history's greatest patrons. He started schools and ordered monks to preserve ancient texts. The creation of a clear, standardized script, Carolingian minuscule, was just as important an innovation as the silver penny, making government work more efficiently. Fueled by his diversified income, Charlemagne launched monumental architectural projects. The crowning jewel was his Palatine Chapel in Aachen. He had marble and columns hauled all the way from Rome and Ravenna, a clear statement that he was the true heir of the Roman emperors. This chapel, where Charlemagne himself was buried, was a physical symbol of his success. His playbook had turned financial stability into a cultural golden age. Section 4. The Legacy and Modern Application. Charlemagne's empire eventually fractured, but his financial playbook became the blueprint for the next 1,000 years of European history. He left behind a legacy of ideas that are just as powerful in a modern boardroom. First, establish a stable, trustworthy unit of value. Charlemagne's silver penny teaches us that without clear financial metrics, no business can succeed long-term. Second, align the incentives of your key players with your own. The benefice system is the medieval version of giving your top executives stock options. Third, diversify your revenue streams. Relying on a single source of income is a recipe for disaster. Charlemagne shows the power of building a resilient financial base. Fourth, invest in long-term capabilities. The roads, bridges, and that ambitious canal show that you have to invest in the systems that enable future growth. Short-term profit is fleeting, long-term capability is true power. Charlemagne wasn't just a king, he was basically the CEO of Europe Incorporated. He pulled off a masterful turnaround of a continent on the verge of total collapse. He understood that wealth wasn't just about hoarding gold, it was about creating self-sustaining systems that generate value and build a lasting legacy. Conclusion. So, the next time you think about the great forces that shape history, don't just look at the generals on the battlefield. Look at the accountants, the builders, and the minters of coin. Charlemagne built Europe's first superpower not just with the might of his army, but with the genius of his economic vision. His wealth playbook, written over a millennium ago, proves that the fundamental rules for building an empire, whether it's made of land or of capital, never really change. The strategies he used to forge a continent from chaos are the same principles that can help you forge your own legacy today. If you want to keep decoding the financial secrets of history's most powerful people, make sure you like, subscribe to my channel History's Wealth Playbook, and hit that notification bell. And let us know in the comments, which historical titans playbook should we break down next? Thanks for watching.